It was a dark and frigid winter night in 1512 when Niccolò Machiavelli, once a respected and powerful figure in Florence, found himself wandering the streets of his beloved city as an outcast. The Medici family had returned to power, and Machiavelli, who had served the Florentine Republic with unwavering loyalty, was now a pariah. His name, once whispered with admiration, was now spat with contempt. The city he had helped to shape had turned its back on him, and the friends he had trusted had become his enemies. Desperate to regain his former position, Machiavelli began writing letters to the new rulers of Florence. These letters were not the proud and confident missives of a statesman, but the abject pleas of a man who had lost everything. He poured his heart into these letters, using his considerable literary talents to craft messages that were both humble and flattering. He wrote poems that were sweet and winsome, hoping to soften the hearts of the Medici. He offered advice on matters of state, drawing from the wealth of his experience, but all his efforts were in vain. His letters were ignored, and his advice was often used to further the careers of others, while he remained in the shadows. Machiavelli's despair deepened into a bitter resentment. He wrote to a friend, "Caught in this way among the lice, I wipe the mold from my brain and relive the feeling of being ill-treated by fate." His once bright future had been snuffed out, and he was left to wander in the darkness of political exile. But Machiavelli was not a man to be easily defeated. In the autumn of 1513, he sat down at his desk and began to write. He poured his frustration, his anger, and his deep understanding of politics into a single, powerful treatise, The Prince. Within a few months, he had completed it. This book was not a sentimental reflection on his fall from grace, but a stark and uncompromising guide to power. It was a distillation of his life's experience, a series of simple but profound truths about the nature of politics and the art of ruling. Machiavelli's The Prince was a revolutionary work. Unlike the idealistic and utopian political theories of his time, Machiavelli's book was practical and realistic. He argued that a ruler must be willing to do whatever it takes to maintain power, even if it means lying, cheating, or betraying those closest to him. He believed that a ruler must be able to switch between being good and being ruthless as the situation demands. Virtue, in the traditional sense, was secondary to the survival and success of the state. Machiavelli also introduced the concept of virtù and fortuna. Virtue was not about being virtuous in the moral sense, but about having the strength and skill to control one's destiny. Fortuna, on the other hand, represented the unpredictable forces of chance and fate. A ruler had to be strong enough to control fortuna and use it to his advantage. Machiavelli famously wrote, "It is better to be impetuous than cautious, because fortuna is a woman, and if you wish to control her, it is necessary to restrain and beat her." Machiavelli's ultimate goal was to make Italy great again, as it had been in Roman times. He believed that his ruthless political science could achieve this. However, his methods were so controversial that they would make him infamous. The Medici, to whom he had dedicated The Prince, were not interested in his ideas. They saw him as a threat, and his book would not bring him the success he had hoped for. Despite this, Machiavelli's work would have a profound impact on European political thought. It marked a crucial step in the understanding of politics, showing that the world of power is often amoral and unforgiving. The Medici's rejection of The Prince was ironic, for it was precisely the kind of ruthless political advice they needed to maintain their power. In the years that followed, Machiavelli turned to literature, writing the comic masterpiece La Mandragola and later, The History of Florence. He received minor government appointments, but never returned to the high office he had once held. He died in 1527, a disappointed and impoverished man, but his legacy lived on. The Prince would be translated into all major European languages and remain in print for centuries, making Machiavelli's name synonymous with political cunning and ruthlessness. In Florence, the Medici's return to power was marked by celebrations and a sweeping political transformation. The Gonfaloniers' term was shortened, the Republic's army was disbanded, and loyal Medici supporters were placed in key positions. But the most significant change was the election of Giovanni de' Medici as Pope Leo X. Leo X, the first pope from Florence, brought great honor to his city, but his papacy would be marked by a complex blend of political pragmatism and personal indulgence. The stage was set for a new era in Florence. one that would be shaped by the ambitions and rivalries of the powerful Medici family. Leo X's rise to the papacy marked a significant shift in the power dynamics of the Catholic Church and the broader political landscape of Europe. As the head of the Church, his influence stretched far beyond the borders of Europe, reaching into the Americas and soon to Africa, India, and the Far East. The Church's vast network of appointments, clerical dues, and taxes brought the papacy immense wealth from its global domain. Leo X quickly followed the footsteps of his predecessors by placing members of his own family, the Medici, in powerful and lucrative positions. One of his first moves was to appoint his cousin, Giulio de' Medici, as the Archbishop of Florence. However, Giulio's illegitimacy posed a problem, as traditionally, children born out of wedlock could not become cardinals. Leo X, known for his political cunning, set up a special papal commission to investigate Giulio's birth. The commission, predictably, found that Giulio's parents had been secretly married at the time of his birth. This cleared the way for Giulio to become a cardinal, a move that would have far-reaching consequences for European history. Not all of Leo X's promises were kept, though. For example, he failed to fulfill his promise to marry his nephew, Lorenzo de' Medici, to the niece of Cardinal Francesco Sodrini. Instead, Leo X had grander plans for Lorenzo, who was later made the Duke of Urbino, with the intention of creating a Medici kingdom in the Romagna. This ambition was a reflection of the political strategies of Lorenzo the Magnificent, Leo X's father, who had instilled in his sons the importance of expanding power through strategic alliances and careful planning. Leo X's political acumen was put to the test early in his papacy. Shortly after he took office, he was approached by Ferdinand I of Spain and Henry VIII of England, who sought his support in an alliance against France. Sensing the potential risk of upsetting Louis XII of France, Leo X diplomatically declined. However, Louis XII soon crossed the Alps with his army, aiming to reclaim the Dukedom of Milan and the Kingdom of Naples. Italy was once again under threat. Leo X responded with a blend of political skill and strategic maneuvering. Without officially joining the Milanese, he secretly sent a large sum of money to the Milanese commander to hire Swiss mercenaries. This move tipped the balance in favor of the Milanese, and the French army was defeated at the Battle of Novara. After this victory, Leo X surprisingly signed a new treaty with France, a decision that, while seemingly contradictory, was part of his broader strategy to secure the Medici's interests. However, Leo X's challenges were far from over. In 1515, the young and ambitious Francis I of France, who had a romantic vision of French conquest in Italy, assembled a massive army and crossed the Alps. The Papal Alliance, supported by the Swiss, met the French at the Battle of Marignano, where Francis I's forces emerged victorious. Leo X, recognizing the futility of resistance, quickly sought an alliance with Francis I. They met in Bologna, where Leo X, despite his unimpressive appearance, managed to secure a favorable agreement. As part of the deal, Leo X conceded the right to make senior church appointments in France to Francis I, a significant loss of papal influence. In return, Leo X's brother, Giuliano de' Medici, was made the Duke of Nemours, further solidifying the Medici family's position in French nobility. Leo X's return to Rome marked the beginning of a golden age for the city. Under his patronage, Rome would become the epicenter of the Italian Renaissance, surpassing even Florence in artistic and cultural achievements. The rebuilding of Rome, initiated by Julius II, continued under Leo X's direction. The centerpiece of this grand vision was the construction of St. Peter's Basilica, which was intended to be the central church of Christendom and the final destination for pilgrims. The basilica was designed by Donato Bramante, who aimed to create a structure that would outshine the great Gothic cathedrals of Northern Europe. When Bramante died in 1514, Leo X appointed Raphael to continue the work. Raphael, a prodigious artist, transformed the design of St. Peter's, changing it from a Greek cross structure to a Latin cross design. He also received numerous commissions from Leo X, including paintings for the Sistine Chapel and portraits that captured the essence of the era's leading figures. Raphael's masterpiece, The School of Athens, depicted the great philosophers of ancient Greece in a setting that blended classical and Renaissance styles, creating a harmonious and humanistic vision. Leo X's patronage extended to other artists as well, including Michelangelo, whose influence on Raphael was evident. Michelangelo's work on the Sistine Chapel ceiling, completed under Julius II, set a new standard for artistic achievement. Leo X continued to support Michelangelo, commissioning him to create the Medici Chapel in Florence, a project that would become a symbol of the family's enduring legacy. Leo X's reign was marked by a blend of political acumen and artistic patronage. While his nepotism and lavish spending on grand displays sometimes drew criticism, his efforts to secure the Medici family's place in European politics and to foster the arts left an indelible mark on history. Rome, under his leadership, became a beacon of Renaissance culture, a city where the spirit of humanism and artistic innovation flourished. Leo X and Michelangelo had a complicated relationship. Despite growing up together in the Medici family's Grand Palazzo Medici, they didn't get along very well. When Leo X became pope, Michelangelo was busy with the massive project of building a tomb for Julius II. This project, which took 30 years to complete, frustrated Michelangelo, who referred to it as the tragedy of the tomb. Later, Leo X, influenced by his cousin Cardinal Giulio de' Medici, commissioned Michelangelo to create a grand tomb for the Medici family in the church of San Lorenzo in Florence. This led to the creation of the Medici Chapel, featuring Michelangelo's famous sculptures of day and night, and dawn and dusk. These statues, filled with a sense of intense emotion, are among Michelangelo's best works. However, Leo X didn't do much to support Michelangelo's work. He also didn't appreciate Leonardo da Vinci's genius. According to a story by the artist Giorgio Vasari, when Leo X gave Leonardo a commission, the Pope was disappointed when Leonardo started preparing his paints and varnishes before beginning the actual work. The Pope said, "What can be expected of a man who attends to the finishing before he even begins his work?" After that, Leonardo didn't receive any more commissions from Leo X. Instead, he was only hired to work on a failed project to drain the Pontine marshes. Leo X was a great patron of the arts, but his taste was not always deep. He collected manuscripts and expanded the Vatican Library, which previously had been much smaller than the Medici Library in Florence. Leo X loved the classics and even wrote poetry, but he also inherited his father's love for grand displays. While his father's extravagance was seen as the natural expression of a Renaissance man, Leo X's lavish spending often seemed absurd. His banquets were legendary, with dozens of courses served on gold and silver platters. The food was often accompanied by elaborate spectacles, like nightingales flying out of pies and children dressed as angels emerging from puddings. Leo X was particularly fond of hunting, even though he was not very good at it. He once rode in to kill a boar that had been caught and brought to him, using a pike in one hand and an eyeglass in the other to help him see. One of Leo X's most cherished pets was an Indian elephant named Hanno. Hanno was the first elephant seen in Italy since the time of Hannibal. The Pope was very fond of Hanno, who would kneel and trumpet when he saw the Pope. When Hanno got sick, Leo X was devastated. He offered a large sum of money to anyone who could cure the elephant, but Hanno died. Leo X had a large grave dug for Hanno and commissioned Raphael to paint a portrait of the elephant on the wall above the grave. He even wrote a Latin epitaph for Hanno. Despite his good-natured and extravagant personality, Leo X could be ruthless when threatened. In 1517, a group of cardinals, including Cardinal Petrucci, plotted to kill the Pope. They planned to poison the bandages used to treat Leo X's anal fistula. Cardinal Petrucci left Rome, but Leo X's spies intercepted a letter that hinted at the plot. The surgeon hired to carry out the poisoning, Battista da Vercelli, was arrested and tortured until he revealed the plot. Cardinal Petrucci was tricked into returning to Rome with a promise of safe conduct, but he was immediately arrested and thrown into the dungeons of Castel Sant'Angelo. Leo X argued that his promise of safe conduct was not valid because it didn't mention that Petrucci had intended to murder him. The other conspirators were also forced to confess and pay large fines, which were used to pay off Leo X's debts. Cardinal Petrucci was later strangled, and the surgeon was brutally executed. Leo X also faced family issues. His brother Giuliano de' Medici, Duke of Nemours, died without leaving a legitimate heir. Leo X then focused on his nephew Lorenzo de' Medici, Duke of Urbino, who had taken over as the Medici ruler of Florence. Lorenzo, however, was arrogant and often offended the Florentine people. Leo X arranged for Lorenzo to marry Madeleine de la Tour d'Auvergne, a French princess. Both Lorenzo and Madeleine were ill, but their child, Caterina, survived. Caterina, now a Medici of royal blood, was brought to Rome, and Leo X's cousin, Cardinal Giulio, took over the rule of Florence. Leo X inherited the Fifth Lateran Council, which had been called to address the Church's need for reform. Leo X, however, was more interested in resolving the schism with the French cardinals, and dissolved the council in 1517. The council's findings were made binding, and anyone who questioned them was excommunicated. Leo X's extravagant lifestyle and patronage of the arts had left the papal treasury nearly empty. To raise funds, Leo X began selling indulgences on a large scale. Indulgences were pieces of paper that promised reduced time in purgatory in exchange for money. This practice became widespread, and indulgence sellers traveled throughout Europe collecting money. The sale of indulgences was widely resented, and in 1517, a young German priest named Martin Luther decided to challenge the church. He nailed his 95 Theses to the door of Wittenberg Castle Church, demanding reform and questioning the practice of selling indulgences. This marked the beginning of the Protestant Reformation, which would forever change the Christian world. The Renaissance had spread across Europe, bringing with it a renewed interest in ancient learning and a surge in humanist ideas. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg around 1450 in Mainz, Germany, played a crucial role in this transformation. When Mainz was sacked in 1462, the early printers scattered, spreading their technology to the Low Countries, 1463, Italy, 1465, and Paris, 1470. This diffusion of printing led to a rise in literacy and a newfound confidence among the merchant class, who began to question the Church's authority. One of the most influential figures of the time was Desiderius Erasmus, a Dutch humanist born in 1469. Erasmus's work, The Praise of Folly, mocked the rigid Aristotelianism of the time, suggesting that there were many different ways to gain wisdom. This idea resonated with many educated people who were beginning to challenge the Church's medieval dominance. The spread of printing and literacy brought about a significant change in society. In the Low Countries, England and Germany, painting and reading flourished, while in France, the changes were more limited to the courts. Even in conservative Spain, the new ideas began to take root. As more people became educated, they started to question the corrupt practices of the Church. This criticism reached a critical point with Martin Luther, a German priest who was born in 1483 in Eisleben, Saxony. Luther grew up in a pious household and studied at the University of Erfurt. His father wanted him to become a lawyer, but Luther entered an Augustinian monastery instead, becoming a priest at the age of 24. In 1510, Luther was sent on a mission to Rome, where he was shocked by the Church's corruption. This led him to study the Bible with fresh eyes, and he concluded that the Church's teachings had obscured the true message of Christianity. Luther believed that salvation came through direct faith, not through the Church's rituals or the Pope's authority. In 1517, Luther famously nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg. These Theses challenged the Church's practice of selling indulgences, which were supposed to reduce the time a soul spent in purgatory. Luther argued that the Pope had no right to forgive sins, as only God could do so. He translated his Theses into German, making them accessible to a wider audience. An enterprising printer began publishing copies, and Luther's ideas quickly spread beyond Wittenberg. The Pope, Leo X, ordered Luther to come to Rome to explain himself, but Luther, aware of the dangers, made excuses. Leo X then sent Cardinal Cajetan to interview Luther, leading to a heated confrontation. However, Luther had gained support from several German nobles, including the Elector of Saxony, Frederick III, who protected him. The situation became more complex when Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, was elected in 1519. Leo X, who had hoped for an ally, now found himself in a difficult position. Charles V, a staunch supporter of church doctrine, was asked to intervene against Luther. but he was hesitant due to the political implication. In 1521, Leo X issued a papal bull excommunicating Luther, but this only made matters worse. Luther responded by publicly burning the bull, and Frederick III placed him under his protection. Luther began translating the Bible into German, allowing people to read it directly without the need for priests. His ideas spread rapidly, reaching Hungary, France, and Bohemia. When Henry VIII of England heard about Luther, he wrote a denunciation, which earned him the title Defender of the Faith from Leo X. Leo X's death in 1521, possibly due to poisoning, left the church in a precarious state. The conclave to elect the next pope was held, and Cardinal Giulio de' Medici, Leo X's cousin, was expected to succeed him. However, the election was complicated by powerful opposition, including from Cardinal Francesco Sodrini and Cardinal Pompeo Colonna. Cardinal Giulio suggested a compromise candidate, the Flemish scholar Cardinal Adrian Dedel, thinking he would be rejected. Instead, Dedel was elected as Pope Adrian VI. Adrian VI was a pious and frugal pope, which did not sit well with the Roman elite. He ordered cardinals and archbishops to leave Rome and live in their dioceses, leading to an economic downturn in the city. Artists and other professionals suffered, and Adrian VI's strict lifestyle was seen as harsh and unsuitable. He died in 1523, likely from poisoning, just 2 years into his papacy. The election of a new pope and the ongoing Reformation continued to reshape the religious and political landscape of Europe, challenging the old order and paving the way for new ideas and movements. Cardinal Giulio de' Medici, who would become Pope Clement VII, entered the conclave well prepared, but so did his enemies, Cardinal Francesco Sodrini and Cardinal Pompeo Colonna. They had the support of King Francis, the first of France and the French cardinals. The conclave dragged on for over 2 months, with bribes and promises flying around, but no clear winner emerged. The people outside grew restless, and the rulers of Europe grew impatient. Eventually, the Holy Roman Emperor and King Henry VIII of England, along with King Francis I, pushed for a Medici pope. After 60 days, the longest conclave in history, Cardinal Medici was elected and became Pope Clement VII. Clement VII was a man of the Medici family, raised in their luxurious palace and given the best education money could buy. At 45, he remembered dining with Lorenzo the Magnificent and listening to great thinkers like Poliziano and Pico della Mirandola. He was handsome but often wore a dark scowl. He was cautious and indecisive, traits inherited from his great-grandfather Cosimo de' Medici. Unlike his cousin Leo X, who was known for his lavish spending, Clement VII was more careful with money. He had a deep love for art, especially the works of Raphael and Michelangelo. Clement VII had a close relationship with Michelangelo, whom he had supervised during the construction of the Medici Chapel in Florence. As Pope, he commissioned Michelangelo to paint the Last Judgment in the Sistine Chapel. The painting is a masterpiece of Renaissance art, depicting a vibrant and complex scene of humanity facing divine judgment. Despite his indecisiveness, Clement VII had a strong faith and a deep understanding of the spiritual and artistic world. Clement VII was also open to new ideas, even those that challenged traditional beliefs. His secretary, Johannes Widmanstadius, introduced him to the heliocentric theory of Nicolaus Copernicus, which suggested that the Earth and other planets revolved around the Sun. This theory had profound implications, challenging the idea that Earth was the center of the universe. Clement VII was intrigued by these ideas and saw no conflict with his faith. He was more progressive in his thinking than many of his contemporaries, including Martin Luther, who rejected Copernicus's ideas. Before becoming pope, Clement VII had a close friendship with Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo, in his later years, was living in Rome and working on projects for Leo X. Despite his genius, Leonardo faced many challenges, including health issues and conflicts with his assistants. He also conducted anatomical research, which the church frowned upon. Leonardo's relationship with the Medici family was complex, and he left behind mysterious notes that hinted at his feelings about them. Despite the difficulties, Leonardo's work continued to influence and inspire others, including Raphael, who impressed Leonardo with his art. Clement VII also patronized Benvenuto Cellini, a talented goldsmith and sculptor known for his colorful and often unreliable autobiography. Cellini's life was marked by violence and scandal, but he was a brilliant artist. Clement VII recognized Cellini's talent and gave him several commissions, which brought him fame in Rome. Despite his many faults, Cellini's work was celebrated, and one of his few surviving pieces, a salt cellar for Francis I, is a testament to his genius. Clement VII's reign as Pope was marked by both challenges and achievements. He faced external threats from the Ottoman Empire and the Protestant Reformation, as well as internal conflicts in Italy. His cautious and indecisive nature made it difficult for him to take bold actions, but he was a man of deep faith and a patron of the arts. His legacy is a testament to the complexities of the Renaissance era, a time of great change and transformation in the world of art, science, and religion.